to the meeting of the Planning and Licensing Committee of the 18th of June 2024. Welcome Diane as our new member of our happy team, and here's to a good year on planning. And welcome to members of the public who have joined us in person, and welcome to those who are following the meeting on the online broadcast. As always, please no speaking until the microphones are switched on for the benefit of those listening online. We have no members of the public present tonight. Apologies, David. Do we have any?
Apologies from Councillor Brown this evening, so we're voting to 11. Ben.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, the minutes from the meeting of the 25th of April. You will have seen those and read them. I've had no comments. Please can I have a proposer? If there is no further comments, thank you, Councillor Wilby. Seconded, Councillor Smith. All those in favour?
Thank you. I'll just note that Councillor Karen Payne, Councillor West and McRobb weren't present at that meeting, so that's fine. It's still carried.
Okay. So those minutes are approved. Agenda item 3 is appointment of a vice chair. Please can I have any nominations? If there are no other nominations, from the chair, I'd like to propose Councillor Kevin Corby. Could I have a seconder, please? Wow. David Wilby, I think you had your hand up quickest. If there's all those in favour?
It's unanimous, Chair.
Welcome to the vice chairmanship, Councillor Corby. I hope that wasn't a surprise. We move on to agenda item 4. Do we have any declarations of interest on the agenda item this evening? Councillor West.
Thank you, Chair. Not a declaration of interest as such, but I have followed this application since it was submitted. It is opposite my house, but I come with an entirely open mind. And I'm here largely actually to represent the residents of the village. So that's my position.
Thank you. We have, I believe, no petitions, deputations or questions.
None received tonight, Chair.
Thank you. So if we go on to agenda item 6, report number 77/2024. Ignore that bit. Yes, we're not doing that. Man, I'll pass. 2023-1297 full recommendations of approval. I believe, Darren, you're presenting. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. First of note, there is an agenda item with a couple of changes to the officer report and also an objection that was received late this morning with responses from highways and from officers. First slide, please. The red oval circle-ish shape identifies the location of the application site in relation to Main Street and the edge of Barrow. Next. It's a closer view of the application site. This is a photograph of the access to the site from Main Street. Next. This is a view looking from the access east along Main Street. Next. This is another view looking, but this time west, down Main Street towards the village. This is a photograph looking back towards the access with Main Street from within the site. Next. This is a view from along the track towards the application site with the paddock that it sits at the rear of the cottage. Next. This is a further view along the access track towards the existing barn with the garage blocks of the granary and miller's barn seen above the existing hedge line. Next. This is another view further along the site showing the same. This is further along the access which brings into view the application site with the existing barn there in the far right hand corner. Next. This is a view of the whole of the access build application site with the existing barn and lean-to structure. This is another photograph, but from further across the field, showing it. This is a close-up of the existing barn and lean-to structure. Next. This is shows the relationship of the existing barn to the western boundary. Next. This is a view back along the access track from the barn. In the distance, you can see the post and rail fence, which is the boundary of the paddock, which is at the rear of the cottage. This is another image looking back across the access track towards Main Street. Next. This is a view across the field towards the eastern boundary. These are the two garage blocks to the rear of the granary and miller's barn, which sit beyond the western boundary of the application site, which you saw in the earlier photographs. This is the garage block and hard standing area for miller's barn. Prior approval was granted previously, as mentioned in the application report, and these next slides show the drawings that were approved as part of that submission. This is the site plan. Next. These are the elevation drawings, floor plans, and now we'll move on to the drawings that have accompanied the current application. This is the location plan with obviously the winding access track from Main Street down to the proposed site of the new dwelling. Existing site plan. This is the proposed site plan with the dwelling moved further away from the western boundary and northern boundary. It's about 20 metres away from the western boundary in total, about 10 metres from the northern boundary. These are the existing elevations of the existing barn. These are the proposed elevations of the new dwelling. Comprises 2-storey and single-storey elements and a detached double garage carport block. Next. Here's the proposed elevation with ground heights, ridge heights, etc. annotated, which is obviously difficult to read off that slide, I accept. Next. These are proposed floor plans. And this is the landscaping plan. Main issues are in relation to policy of those identified in the officer report, which are repeated here as the main issues. Next. Continuation of the local plan policies and supplementary guidance. Policy, the principle of development was established by the Class Q prior approval, granted under reference 2023-0985 PAD. There's no objection from Highway Authority, subject to conditions and informatives. In relation to design, it's considered that proposed scheme is a visual enhancement over the approved design. The design officer supports the scheme. Design and layout is considered appropriate for its location. In relation to contamination, there's no objection from environmental protection, subject to conditions. Next. Forestry officer has no objection in relation to the impact of the proposed development on existing hedgerows and trees. And there is a condition requiring retention of hedgerow along the northern western boundaries at a minimum of 2 metres in height, and obviously for trees and hedgerows to be protected during construction. There's no objection with regards to ecology, subject to a condition requiring submission of a biodiversity enhancement scheme for the site. No objection on archaeological grounds. In conclusion, it's recommended that planning permission is granted, subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. Members, the ward member, would you like to speak first?
I don't know what to say about it, Chair. It's fairly straightforward. It's quite similar to another one in my ward, just below Market Overton, where a similar shed was approved for demolition and replaced by two rather more attractive stone houses. We did try at the time to get the applicant to build 3 rather than 2 housing numbers, but we were unsuccessful. As Darren knows, I've been involved a little bit in this application since it was submitted. There is one objection from the village, from number 9 Main Street. I've put the feelers out on, there's a village WhatsApp group. I asked for feedback from the village on this. Nobody has any strong feelings about it, so I think from my point of view, the village are tacitly in favour, I would say. People tend to object if they want to, but they're not going to come out strongly in favour. So, yeah, I think it looks nice. It will improve the look of that edge of Barrow.
Thank you. Other members? Councillor Wilby.
Just a quickie, I thought that was a really good walkthrough, Darren. Thank you very much. Very clear.
Thank you.
Councillor Corby was just first.
Yeah, just one question from me really. Barrow is obviously very, very rural. What sort of, where am I looking? Fuel, again, I've got to ask about solar panels, I've got to ask about carbon capture and all that sort of stuff, because I'm assuming there's no gas there. How's the house going to be heated longer term, because it's obviously a large 4 or 5 bedroom property. Are we putting any conditions with relation to solar panels or green energy? Thank you.
Sorry, it's not been discussed at this stage during the application process.
Okay, will it be discussed?
Not unless we discuss it now, no.
So am I correct in thinking, Darren, we can't, under policy, insist on such things currently, as it currently stands?
Generally speaking, the sort of green credentials are, or the standards and the requirements are set in the building regulations at present rather than planning legislation. So there isn't sort of a policy justification for insisting on those elements. Obviously, if those are brought forward, then we can consider them. But yes, the requirements in respect of provision of insulation and so on are set within the building regulations rather than planning legislation.
Am I correct in thinking we could put some sort of informative to say we would like them to consider? Is that a positive nod from the planners?
Yes, we could certainly include a note to applicant, as Nick says, would be building regulations, but we'd be supportive of solar panels.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
I think I may be showing some ignorance here, so a bit of education would be helpful. But I just wondered why this application had to come before a planning committee. It seemed to be fairly straightforward. No objection support for the one we've just had, and it doesn't seem to be in controversial of any of the, the minor one with the core strategy SC4. But otherwise, I'm just a bit puzzled as to why it's come forward.
Certainly, the application's been brought forward because of the conflict with policies CS4 and SP6 in terms of the location. Obviously, the previous prior approval is a material consideration that in this instance has influenced the recommendation sufficiently, but because of that conflict with policy CS4 and SP6 and the recommendation for approval, it needed to come before the committee.
Yeah, close back to that, we would normally try and make sure we had more than one application, but just on this occasion, there was nothing forthcoming to allow that to happen. So, apologies that it's quite simple and straightforward. Any more comments? Councillor McRobb.
Just a general point, really, rather than specifically about this application. But if we are able to respond to Councillor Corby's suggestion that we would encourage solar panels, green energy, etc. Can we not make that the default?
In terms of sort of making it a standard informative, I mean, there is sort of policy encouraging the use of green technology and renewable energy within the development plan. Those policies are sort of in those documents in front of you, and they do, as I said, they do encourage the use of those and support the use of renewable technology where appropriate. In terms of making it a sort of a standard approach to development, the question there would be, where do you stop in terms of putting informatives on to encourage any number of issues? I would suggest it would perhaps be more relevant to include where it's particularly relevant to the case, rather than as a default thing that goes on every planning application.
Okay, I'd accept that.
Thank you. If there's no more comments, the recommendation is for approval. Please can I have a proposer? Councillor Payne, and a seconder? Councillor Payne. I've missed that. All those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chair. That's carried.
Thank you. That's carried. We now move on to agenda item 7, the appeals report. This is a duet between Nick and Andrew, I believe.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, the appeals report is in front of you. There's a number of items on it. Had a number of new appeals lodged since the last meeting, and a fairly lengthy list of decisions that have come through as well. I don't have anything specific to say about any of them, unless there are any particular questions from members.
The panel would have read through those. We had a particular comment. Councillor Clifton.
Could you just clarify, please, the precise position with the alpaca farm in the parish of Preston? Thank you.
I'm not familiar with that particular application. I don't think it's on the appeals.
That's
list.
enforcement, does. We'll come to enforcement.
Okay, sorry.
Any questions on the appeals document? Councillor Karen Payne. Microphone.
Sorry. I'd just like to know how we're doing, really, as a whole, in terms of appeals and
scores on the door.
Success rate. Yeah.
I don't have a sort of an up-to-date position in terms of sort of wins and losses,
yeah.
As on the overall sort of year to date. There have been a few dismissals more recently.
Yeah.
However, I would sort of suggest those are sort of specific case issues rather than a more general sort of shift in approach. Okay. I think those dismissals are, sort of having read them, that they are sort of specific to the matters of the case in front of them, rather than a more consistent approach or change in approach from the inspectorate.
Okay.
All told.
I think it might be good just to have a review of where we are, maybe next time. I can
certainly take that away and see if we can't provide some figures at the next meeting. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
I didn't quite see who was first. Councillor Corby.
Chair, yeah, I've got to ask about the appeal at Rylebin within my own ward. This was a application that was strongly supported by the parish, and obviously it's gone to appeal now. But at the moment, the reasons given for refusal were conservation area, heritage. We understand all that, but presently that area is being used as storage for bricks, building materials, etc., etc. And given the strong support of the village, it was disappointing to see that it was refused. We'll see how the appeal goes, but just wondered if there was anything you could add to that.
I believe this one relates to a previously refused application that also went through the appeal process, and the inspector did dismiss that appeal. So we have been consistent in our approach for this site. I know the points made, and obviously we have, in terms of, you know, what they're storing there, we could look at, you know, untidy site or anything, you know, along that case in terms of enforcement. But it's not a site that we would encourage development on. We feel there is a strong case in terms of the heritage side of things for keeping that open in order to preserve the setting of both the conservation area and the adjacent listed buildings. But we'll see whether the inspector or they change their mind on that.
Councillor McGraw.
Just another request, which I'm probably going to be told will happen anyway, but in response to Councillor Payne's request that we have a kind of a score of appeal success and fail rate, I'd like to see the costs as well.
In terms of
I don't know whether you would automatically present that information too, but in terms of appeals where we've lost, there can be a significant cost to the council associated with that.
You're talking in terms of specific costs applications that are awarded by the inspectorate rather than a cost of dealing with the appeal?
Yes.
I can certainly pass that on as well.
It'd be interesting.
I think what would be good actually, Nick, if you could pass on that, if we could maybe have a 12-month rolling figure, so we can then begin to see trends over time.
Yeah, that would be useful. Yeah.
Thank you. If there's another question, I do have one, or for clarity. There's obviously the appeal in Braunston that was allowed, and there's been quite a lot of traffic around the seeming misinterpretation of figures by the inspector. Just for everyone's benefit, Nick, do you think you could just give an update of what happened with that and why the outcome is where it is?
Yeah, certainly. The inspector had set out in his decision letter some of all the factors that led to their decision, and one of the references in there was to a requirement for 150 dwellings and to be provided per annum. That figure, the correct figure is 123. The local planning authority did take legal advice as to whether or not the decision was challengeable. That legal advice concluded that the likelihood of a successful challenge was low. Essentially, the conclusion there was, in challenging an appeal decision, it has to be on the basis of a legal or an error in law. The conclusion essentially is that the error is not an error of law, but one of planning judgment. The inspector had given greater weight to the provision of housing as a result, and therefore, as it's not an error in law, it's not challengeable, or the likelihood of successive challenge is less as a result. So the advice that we've received in that respect is that there is a low likelihood of success, and therefore that obviously had to be factored in terms of the likely sort of cost of taking that challenge forward, and the potential for costs to be awarded, as Councillor McRobb was saying, if that's unsuccessful.
So just for clarity for the panel, you cannot appeal on an issue of judgment only on a legal principle. So the inspector has got it wrong effectively, but the legalities were correct.
I'll probably defer to our planning solicitor for the technical side of that.
I just think it's important. I think this issue will not go away.
But yes, essentially the issue of challenging a planning appeal is whether or not the inspector has erred in law, rather than whether or not they've given the weight that we would expect to specific planning issues.
Sorry, I've been very rude. This is our new legal advice, Charlotte. Sorry, Charlotte, I totally forgot to introduce you.
Can I just say, Chairman, thank you, that in relation to the Braunston matter, I mean, that's in some ways it's still ongoing, so there's a lot of emails going back and forth. So it's not actually entirely finalised, and it's obviously generating a lot of interest. And I know that, or it has been suggested that Braunston have actually engaged their own solicitors on this. So I know that they are going to be in contact with RCC solicitors. So it's basically things are still going on. Thanks.
thank you, Charles. But I just thought for the panel to just a bit of clarity on the position for the rest of the panel would be good. Do we have any further questions, Councillor West?
Thank you, Chairman. It might be useful, Giles, if somebody, one of us, feeds back to Chairman of Braunston Parish Council the advice that our officers have received in terms of likely success rate on that.
I think it's fair to say that they will have been told all the information that has been spoken tonight on the email. I mean, you must have seen the emails. They will have been, everything that you've said tonight, they've been told.
Yes, I've certainly seen some of the emails. My understanding is that the parish council have taken their own legal advice prior to sort of any action that they have taken up to this point. So,
thank you. Do we have any other questions on the appeals report? Thank you. I'm not aware of any other urgent business. The date of the next meeting is the 16th of July, and we conclude this meeting at 7:26. Thank you, everybody.